Blog Talk Radio.
We'll never see you again.
I dearly hope so, my prince. There is so much more I meant to tell you. Everything you know is about to change.
American Daily Review.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
When America needed them most, two men rose to the occasion. Doug Gibbs of Constitution Radio and PoliticalPistachio.com. Jasnius of PoliticalPistachio.com, Constitution Radio, and the Hard Starboard Radio Network. This is American Daily Review on blogtalkradio.com.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's home to me and I walk alone. this empty street on the boulevard of broken dreams, where the city sleeps and I'm the only one. And I walk up my shadow's the only one that walks beside me. My shallow heart's the only thing that's beating. Sometimes I wish someone up there will find me. Till then I walk alone.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me. You're it? You're black plastic!
No, Jasmius.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game! It's all about the game, and how you play it, all about control. And if you can take it, all about your stay. And if you can play it, it's all about pay. Who's gonna make it? I am the game, you don't wanna play me. I am control, no way you can shake me. I am heavy debt, no way you can pay me. I am the pain, and I know you can't take me. Look over your shoulder, ready to run, like a Cleveland bench from a smoking gun. I am the game, and I make the rules.
After a 65-hour interlude, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first Saturday afternoon extravaganza of the year 2015. Kicking off here at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. For the next 3 hours, we will go through the big stories of the week. And, I've got I put them together this week because I'm flying solo, as the opening musical montage was meant to convey, to indicate. Mr. Douglas V. Gibbs, Mr. Constitution, that Constitution guy, my close friend, comrade in arms, brother from another mother, is at an activism class today, an activism seminar, which is kind of like a camel taking a hump class. But, it's like I always say, and there are lots of things I always say, but this is definitely one of them, that if you go back, and I use the analogy of sports, all right? The best, the greatest players in any sport, whatever it is, soccer, basketball, football, baseball, tennis, golf, etc., etc., the greatest players in each sport, in every sport, are immensely talented, but they don't simply rely on their talent. They work hard on top of their unparalleled talent, and they work harder than everybody else. It's like Seahawk quarterback Russell Wilson puts it: the separation is in the preparation. And that's a pithy saying, but it's also a very accurate one. Some of the greatest players who've ever laced up a pair of boots or put on sneakers and a tank top or put on pads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, have simply worked harder than everybody else. They didn't rest on the laurels of their talent. And that's what Mr. Gibbs is doing. I mean, Douglas V. Gibbs is already an activist, ladies and gentlemen. But he's taking a class. He's getting better. He's not resting on his laurels. He's not resting on his talent. He is working at it. He's always working to improve. It's a very Pete Carroll-esque philosophy, actually. Pete Carroll, of course, the coach of the world champion Seattle Seahawks, whose philosophy of nurturing positivity and constant competition, constantly trying to get better. That's the way to go, man. That's where Doug is today. So I'm flying solo all 3 hours of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza here at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, where, by the way, there are over 5.5. Actually, officially next Saturday, it will have been 5.5 years worth of podcasts for your downloading pleasure, for your education, edification, enlightenment, and entertainment in all your life's endeavors. And also, click on the follow button. And by the way, my name is Jasmius. I am your host, your ruler, your benevolent despot, and your fountain rabbi of conservatism, constitutionalism, Christianity, and common sense, Monday through Friday on the Hard Starboard Radio Network at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, where there are over 7.5 years worth of podcasts for your downloading enjoyment, your downloading ecstasy, your downloading pleasure, and your downloading learning. This is the place to go if you want to learn, folks. blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network, blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, and later on today in the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza at KCAAradio.com globally, and for those of you in the Southern California Inland Empire area, KCAA AM 1050, FM 106.3, for the flagship program of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, in which I will be sitting in the center seat today, in command of the Starship Pistachio, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, or in this case, Constitution Radio Jasmius sitting in for Douglas V. Gibbs. So, and now I'm being nagged by my daughter via email. Yes, dear, I'll cancel the $1,000 on the Parent Plus loan. Got to figure that out, and no, I haven't lost my train of thought. I can do that after the show today. This is about the Saturday afternoon extravaganza. And by the way, guest call-in number here, 646-595-4520. Email address, jasmius@comcast.net. The chat room is open and is starting to fill up. And, of course, later on today, if you want to call in on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, with Jasmius sitting in, the call-in number there, 888-909-1050. And if you want to listen in the third hour of the Saturday afternoon extravaganza on Constitution Radio with Douglas Gibbs, the number is 832-999-1050. And I should put in a mention of our YouTube channels, youtube.com/user/hardstarboardradio, where the Jasmius cam footage from, when I can remember to turn the Jasmius cam on, of the most listened to podcast of the week gets uploaded the following week, and also youtube.com/user/American Daily Review 2, where each Saturday afternoon extravaganza gets uploaded usually by the end of the weekend. I'll see what I can do, because this is wild card weekend in the NFL playoffs. The playoffs have arrived, and I've even got the first game, the early game today, Arizona Cardinals at Carolina Panthers. I've got the scoreboard up. That doesn't start until about, a little over an hour from now, so I'll be monitoring that for you NFL fans in the audience. I mean, I know Cardinals, Panthers, we not exactly the marquee matchup of Wild Card Weekend, but we provide this as a public service for all those NFL fans out there. And of course, like I say, I'm flying solo today. We got 15 stories, but in hour number 2, Jennifer Crawford, my friend of over 20 years online, that Hoosier gal in the great state of Indiana, will be calling in. So I've got to make like a library and book, ladies and gentlemen. Story number 15. Yes, 15 stories. I just couldn't help myself. Story number 15. The 2016 GOP presidential frontrunner is Jeb Bush? No, ladies and gentlemen, he's not. Nor will he ever be. But CNN sure wants to demoralize us into believing that he is. It's a quote from, CNN.com. Jeb Bush is the clear Republican presidential frontrunner, surging to the front of the potential GOP pack, following his announcement that he's actively exploring a bid, a new CNN ORC poll found. He takes nearly 1/4, 23%, of Republicans surveyed in the nationwide poll, putting him 10 points ahead of his closest competitor, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, who tallied 13%. Physician Ben Carson comes in third with 7%, and Senator Rand Paul and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee are both tied for fourth with 6%. That marks a drop in support for all but Christie and Bush from the last CNN ORC survey of the field. Conducted in November, that poll showed Bush in the lead, but only taking 14% of the vote, while Carson came in second with 11%, and Christie tied Representative Paul Ryan for fourth with 9% support. End of quote. Now, let me just start by saying that this is not so much a post about, or a commentary about this poll as it is a commentary about why I typically don't comment about polling. The reason is simple. The one and only time that political polling is ever remotely relevant is in the week before an election. Period. The rest of the time it's entirely masturbatory. It's Obamedia rainmaking. It's manufacturing news that is really nothing of the sort. It's pot stirring, especially in the cast of designating the second Bush brother, the self-proclaimed anti-conservative, as the presumptive 2016 Republican presidential nominee. CNN would have saved a lot of time and money by just publishing a picture of a big fat extended middle finger under the headline, "Screw you teabaggers, enjoy your third Bush." And never is political polling more irrelevant and meaningless than right after an election. Why is that? Cycle hasn't even begun yet. At this point, there isn't a 2016 GOP field. No candidate has officially declared. Even the former Florida governor has only declared his intention to explore the possibility of running, not an actual candidacy. You know, there's a part of me that still thinks that Jeb Bush is throwing out these teases because his book sales are underachieving and he needs to keep his name buzzing. His surname brings me to my next point. The one and only factor that could possibly account for Jeb Bush topping 2016 GOP presidential polling 2 years out from that election, if it ever takes place, is name recognition. It's the same factor in Mitt Romney being the other name bobbing on top of these hyperventilating hypotheses. We political junkies consistently forget how little those who don't share our particular hobby pay attention to politics, or the political figures our particular hobby pay attention to politics or the political figures therein. Believe it or not, most Americans have never heard of Chris Christie or Ben Carson or Rand Paul or Mike Huckabee or Paul Ryan or Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or the man who actually will be the 2016 Republican nominee, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Hell, most Americans can't name their own congressman, 2 senators, or even who the vice president is. I mean, some can't even answer the question of from which country America won its independence and in what century it did so. Or never underestimate the ignorance of the American voter. I think Winston Churchill had a similar comment when he said that the best argument against democracy is a conversation with the average voter. Same idea. And that is precisely why Jeb Bush is not and will never be the 2016 Republican nominee or even a front runner. because name recognition is only what gets you in the door. This is why there is a nominating process and primary elections and caucuses state by state and endless, interminable stage-clogging debates. That, and there is about as much appetite for a third Bush presidency amongst the GOP base as there is ambition in Bill Clinton's part to join a monastery, which is precisely why the Oba media, the legacy media, pick a name for them, is getting as early a leg up as possible on generating the sort of inevitability meme that will foist Jeb Bush on us anyway to pave the way for another rancorous Republican Party split, millions of conservative voters staying home again, and creating the opening for Elizabeth Warren to run for electoral daylight. Which I have to admit, just as a warning to all my Tea Party friends, is entirely possible if Tea Partiers, TPers don't smarten up. Stop declaring any semi-public conservative who gives a speech with which they agree presidential timber. Stop fragmenting amongst multiple candidates and, well, creating the opening for the designated rhino to run for nomination daylight. Learn how politics works and the kind of resume that actually wins national elections, and otherwise do what it takes to actually win. In short, Republicans' infamous nickname Stupid Party isn't limited to the party establishment. And any incarnation of the GOP that would sign off on or even allow a Bush trilogy would be stupid indeed. And parenthetically, it just came out this morning that now it was thought, since Jeb Bush is kind of Marco Rubio's mentor of sorts, it was thought that the junior, was he the junior? No, he is the junior Florida senator. It was thought that Marco Rubio wouldn't run if Jeb Bush did run, but I see something today is came across the headlines. Jeb Bush close, or not Jeb Bush, well, yeah, him, but also Marco Rubio closer than ever to declaring his presidential candidacy, or at least exploring the possibility. And there's quite a bit of overlap there. Two candidates from Florida. I think really the reason that Rubio is doing it is just in case Jeb Bush doesn't run, then his name will be set up as the one to whom the establishment can turn. Because don't forget, Marco Rubio is not going to be running as a Tea Partier. He's going to be running as an establishment guy because he was the face of comprehensive immigration reform in the last Congress. Never forget that, folks. So if Jeb Bush, who is huge on border erasure, decides not to run, that slot opens up completely for Senator Marco Rubio. So just keep that in mind. Story number 14, and these next two are kind of brief, but I threw them in anyway just because I thought they were important enough to include. Fed has no possibility of withdrawing stimulus, monetary stimulus, Fed meaning Federal Reserve for those of you in Malaga, Washington, or QE infinity, quantitative easing. There's a quote from Newsmax. With oil prices having plunged to 5-year lows, the energy industry is headed for bust. But that's not our biggest worry, says Peter Schiff, CEO of Euro-Pacific Capital. Much greater and more fragile bubbles likely exist in the stock, bond, and real estate markets, which have also been inflated by the easiest monetary policy in history, he writes in a commentary on his firm's website. The Fed lacks the fire. Now, this is really the key thing to take note of in this story, folks. The Fed lacks the firepower to fight a new recession within the greater context of the Obama depression, because there were multiple recessions in the first Great Depression. Let's just remember that. The Fed lacks the firepower to fight a new recession that a bursting of any of these bubbles could create, Schiff says. Since interest rates are already at zero, it has no ability to aggressively cut rates now in the face of a weakening economy. All it can do is go back to the well of quantitative easing, which is exactly what I think they will do. End of quote. Now, indeed, folks, in fact, the Fed doesn't, and Janet Yellen, they don't dare do anything else. I mean, think about it. Allowing the market to set interest rates would cause interest rates to explode. They would skyrocket, which would explode government debts in turn at all levels, wipe out heavily leveraged companies of all sizes, as well as a large swath of the American consuming public. And, those with multiple maxed out credit cards, and otherwise create the economic equivalent of the nuclear nightmare scene in Terminator 2, if you recall that scene. Just like a scythe cutting down a field of wheat. Also, remember the currency currency debatement. Let's start take two, okay? Also, remember that currency debasement is the only thing creating the fiction of that economic recovery we keep hearing about. We've been hearing about it for 5 years, which never quite seems to ever materialize, just as it also has fueled these multiple economic bubbles. And therein lies the irony, folks. The U.S. economy has, in reality, never recovered at all. It's like I maintain, it's an engineered depression. It's created by the Democrat financial logic bomb. It's kept in place by Obamanomics. And the bursting of any or all of the bubbles that quantitative easing has inflated will make the Obama depression even worse, beyond any capability of the Federal Reserve or any stimulus program to conceal. Parenthetically, do you think that the Republican 114th Congress could be bullied or bulldozed into enacting another American Recovery and Reinvestment Act? Squandering another $1 trillion of waste paper from Janet Yellen's printing presses. Not so long ago, I would have thought, nah, not a chance. Now, after Cromdibus, yeah, could be. In the words of the noted political commentator Bugs Bunny. But on the bright side, terminal deflation is a stout barrier against runaway hyperinflation, which will ensue the moment the U.S. economy ever actually starts to recover. But that'll be President Walker's problem, won't it? Of course, that there ever is a President Walker. Here's a thought. Maybe we should start bombarding the White House with T-shirts sporting the phrase, U.S. economy to Obama. I can't breathe! Heck, I'd buy one, and I don't even have an income at the present time. Story number 13. Story number 13. Obamacare fines to rise for uninsured. Yeah, you may have noticed the individual mandate has not been deferred again. That's right. And so, because the individual mandate has not been deferred again, unconstitutionally and illegally by presidential decree, then here come the fines for those who don't have health care coverage. I mean, what could have happened to cause Barack Obama to leave the further deferment of the individual mandate off his presidential to-do list? Oh, yeah, wasn't there something back on November 4th, a couple of months ago? Yes, as of tomorrow, it will be 2 months. A couple months ago. To quote Bugs Bunny again. Yeah, could be. Here's a quote from Michael Medeiros.files.wordpress.com. Being uninsured in America will cost you more in 2015. It's the first year all taxpayers have to report to the IRS whether they had health insurance for the previous year, as required under Obamacare. Those who were uninsured face fines, the individual mandate, unless they qualify for one of about 30 exemptions, most of which involve financial hardships. Dana Dayson of Phoenix, Arizona, estimates that she'll have to pay the tax man $290 when she files her federal return. Miss Dayson, who's in her early 30s, works in marketing and doesn't have a lot left over each month after housing, transportation, and other fixed costs. She'd like health insurance, but she couldn't afford it in 2014, as required by the law. It's touted as this amazing thing, but right now, for me, it doesn't fit into my budget, she said, and interrupt quote. In essence, Miss Dayson is being fined for being down on her luck. Since Americans no longer have a choice about purchasing health insurance and she can't afford it, evidently even with the illegal subsidies through healthcare.gov, and wait till those dry up, folks, if the Supreme Court rules the constitutional way this coming June, Ms. Dayson is being penalized for the bleak economic condition which Obamanomics has inflicted upon her and the rest of us. Tell me how this is compassionate again. I'm not quite sure about that. Never have been, really. Or a great deal, or universal coverage, or this amazing thing. I mean, I don't really get any of that. It looks to me like a mass bilking, and Miss Dayson recognizes it. Perhaps. Every Obamerica Stanny does realize it. Resuming quote, because here's the other person they profiled for this article. Ryan Moon of Des Moines, Iowa, graduated from college in now it's the year before last, 2013, with a bachelor's in political science and is still hunting for a permanent job with benefits, which is not surprising when your degree is in political science. He expects to pay a fine of $95. A supporter of the health care law, he feels conflicted about its insurance mandate and fine. Isn't that interesting? He's conflicted. Or in other words, he also recognizes what a tyrannical ripoff Obamacare is, but doesn't want to publicly admit it for fear of being seen as blaspheming his demigod. I hate the idea that you have to pay a penalty, but at the same time, it helps other people, said Moon, who's in his early 20s. It really helps society, but society has to be forced to help society. End of quote. I don't know. I mean, this is yet another example of how youth is wasted on the young. Along with critical thinking abilities, something with which this tyke has obviously never been taught. How does being fined for not being able to afford the exorbitant, comprehensive Obamacare coverage Mr. Moon doesn't need help anybody else? And who does it help? Society? If society is helping society, isn't that tantamount to saying that society is helping itself? And doesn't that run diametrically counter to everything Obamacare stands for? And why would society have to be forced to help itself? I fear this lad is hopelessly confused, although he appears to have a sufficient modicum of mental acumen to realize the cash that's being unjustly siphoned out of his wallet. Thus, his emotional conundrum and cognitive dissonance. He's been brainwashed into believing that getting screwed by the government is social justice as long as, one, the right people get screwed, i.e. the rich, and two, he's exempt from it. The fact that he is conflicted about this shows that perhaps there is hope for Mr. Moon yet, and young people like him. It's just too bad his and his generation's idiotic 2008 and 2012 votes have rendered it far too late for his gradual ideological awakening to do him any practical good. An expensive lesson indeed. Here's a question to consider as we leave this story. anybody have Mr. Moon's address so I can send him regular bills for my eventual part of this fiasco? No, I'm not kidding. Story number 12. AirAsia Flight 8501. Now, what you may ask, well, what about AirAsia Flight 8501? Well, remember Malaysian Airlines Flight 370? The last spring, the flight that just disappeared into thin air. They still haven't found it. Never found any wreckage. Never found any bodies. No evidence. Just disappeared without a trace. Well, a week ago, AirAsia Flight 8501, which was flying from now Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was supposed to go from Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur specifically, the capital of Malaysia, to Beijing, People's Republic of China, and it got turned around and flew out into the Indian Ocean and disappeared. Well, AirAsia Flight 8501 took off from Java in Indonesia and was headed for Singapore. And then last Saturday, that flight disappeared. It was an Airbus A320-200. It was flying from the Indonesian city of Surabaya on Java, the island of Java, to Singapore. In fact, it was last Sunday morning local time. And it disappeared. Now, it took a while, but and then this is what differs AirAsia Flight 8501 from Malaysia Flight 370. They found the wreckage of AirAsia Flight 8501 within 2 days. AirAsia stock struggled as news of missing AirAsia Flight 8501 spread. The missing flight is an Airbus A320-200 twin-engine single-aisle aircraft capable of seating up to 180 passengers in a single-class configuration. Early reports had the jet declared as safe with no known problems. The crew attempted to avoid bad weather but found themselves caught up in dense storm clouds, strong winds, and lightning. Shortly thereafter, Indonesian air traffic control lost contact with the flight. The flight from Indonesia to Singapore was mostly inhabited by Indonesians, but one Singaporean, one Malaysian, one Englishman, and 3 South Koreans were also aboard. Including the 7 crew members, there were 162 people on board the flight when it vanished. A number of countries have offered support in the search for the AirAsian flight, and Indonesia specifically asked the United States for assistance in locating it. After a couple of days of searching, objects from the wreckage of the flight began to appear in the Java Sea. The Associated Press reports objects resembling an emergency slide and a plane door. An Indonesian Air Force official later stated that 10 big objects had been spotted, that a large number of white-colored objects located about 10 kilometers from the spot where the plane was last seen on radar. A shadow has also been located on the seabed, which is believed to be the missing plane, the fuselage and wreckage that sank, supposed to be bobbing about on the surface of the Java Sea. Shortly after debris began to be spotted, bodies also began to appear, floating near the site where the plane was last seen. The recovery effort has become a joint operation, including both the Indonesian Navy and American warships. A number of other countries have also lent their assistance. Ongoing attempts to recover bodies from the water have been severely hampered by poor weather and waves of between 2 and 3 meters in height. Now, I can't leave this story without mentioning the Muslim connection, because, of course, Indonesia is the largest, in terms of population, the largest Muslim country on earth. It turns out that the pilot was a Muslim. The AirAsia flight that recently vanished without a word, without a trace, was being flown by Captain Irianto, a devout and active Muslim. His co-pilot was a Muslim French national, by the way. The pilot of the Malaysian Flight 370, that vanished without a trace last spring, was also a devout Muslim, as was his co-pilot. Both are experienced pilots, and experts found it to be conceivable that they could have avoided the tragedies that befell them and the dead passengers under their care. They're dead now, anyway. Experts found it inconceivable that communication simply went dark and they simply lost touch with the flights and then had to search for the flights for an extended period of time before discovering fateful ends of the AirAsia flight and never discovering the wreckage of the Malaysia flight. So we asked the question, was the disappearance of these flights and the nosedive of the first one into the ocean and the disappearance of the second just a tragedy or just, an accident? Accidents? Or do they have anything in common with the flights that nosedived into the, say, World Trade Center towers or the field in Pennsylvania or the Pentagon on September the 11th, 2001? I mean, when the first flight hit the World Trade Center, we exclaimed, "What an awful accident!" When the second plane hit, we saw the images, we exclaimed, "This is done on purpose." Even the media talking heads at the time, covering it live, said that. Because nobody could imagine. Well, nobody's going to fly an airliner into a skyscraper deliberately. We found out differently very quickly. Now, when the first plane from the Indonesian region vanished under dubious circumstances, we cried out for how unfortunate of an accident it was. Although, some of us suspected foul play in defiance to the politically correct narrative being pushed by the media. Now there has been a second flight that suddenly vanished without a trace for a couple of days anyway. Similar in circumstance and similar in the membership to Islam in regards to the pilots, should we once again say it was a tragic accident? Or should we come to the same conclusion we came to when the second plane hit the Twin Towers and realized it was done on purpose? I mean, I don't know how many passengers on those planes were non-Muslims, but how would the slaughter of those people differ in mind of the terrorists, the jihadists, shooting up a mall in the United States or hijacking planes on 9/11 knowing that the consequences would be death? Potential final result with the two flights was either to reach a destination so that the planes could be used later as guided missiles, in essence, or a dive into the ocean, both of which could be considered serving Allah and likely a 72 Virgin-inspired suicide with the death of infidels on the hands of the perpetrator. Now, this is one of those things we'll never know for certain. We'll never know for certain whether either of these flights, whether Malaysian Flight 370 or AirAsia Flight 8501, we'll never know why the latter flight, AirAsia Flight 8501, plunged into the Sea of Java. We'll never know that because everyone's dead, and there's no recording, there's no air traffic communications chatter back and forth to indicate that. So all we have is speculation. Same thing with Malaysia Flight 370. There are some who say that it crashed. There are others who say that it disappeared into a time warp, which is what CNN was reduced to speculating back last spring. And then there are some who believe, I've remained agnostic about this question, but there are some who believe that it was redirected to a secret location, perhaps in Pakistan or Afghanistan or someplace else, and it's been repainted. It's going to be used. Remember those 11 airliners in Libya that disappeared? I mean, they may be putting together a whole fleet to attack multiple targets all at once. Maybe here, maybe in Europe, maybe both. But there are some who believe that Malaysia Flight 370 was hijacked for that purpose, to add it to the jihadist air force, if you will, whether Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State or what have you. But the problem is we'll never really know that for sure either. All we know is that these planes disappeared under mysterious circumstances. In the case of the first one, Malaysia Flight 370, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, without a trace, and that the pilots were Muslim and they were originated from Muslim countries. That's all we know. But call it educated speculation that they may be used for, not Air Asia Flight 8501, but Malaysia Flight 370, that the plane anyway, may be used for, shall we say, nefarious and destructive purposes in the not too distant future. Story number 11. Communism triumphant. Communist regimes tighten their grip on their own people. It's very interesting. It's very illustrative of how communist regimes react to how the United States relates to them. First example here, Red China cracks down on freedom and Christianity. David Marshall explained when he was the December 13th, 2014 guest on Constitution Radio that in China a powerful underground Christian church exists. Though some freedoms have emerged for a short while as communist China toyed with the insertion of limited capitalism into their otherwise government-managed economy, and therefore moribund economy. Citizens became more defiant after tasting a small morsel of freedom. The communist leadership is cracking down on any public displays of Christianity and any emergence of paraphernalia or information that champions liberty. The ChiComms ruling class recognizes that with Christianity comes an increase in demand for freedom, and the communists in control refuse to tolerate such passion. And the intolerance by the government in China regarding Christianity has revealed itself quite recently. An uptick in ferocity, you might say. The week before Christmas, Chinese authorities dismantled a cross at a Christian nursing home. The decision by the communist government occurred in the Zhejiang province, where the Christian population has been steadily growing. Ever notice how the church always seems to grow fastest in areas where it's under the greatest persecution? That's an equation that we American Christians really don't want to notice, really don't want to pay attention to, but it's there, man. The biggest growth in the Christian church in history was during the several centuries of mass murderous Roman oppression of Christianity. And ultimately, the Roman Empire couldn't stamp out Christianity, which is why Constantine turned around and embraced Christianity, or at least pretended to, made a modus vivendi with it. And that wasn't, spiritually speaking, that wasn't good for the church, as it turned out. You know the term Roman Catholicism? That's what we're talking about. The reason given for the removal of the cross was simply that the orders came from high up. 426 churches in the province have received orders for the demolition or removal of crosses. China claims it guarantees freedom of religion as long as people worship in institutions that are registered with the ruling Communist Party's religious affairs authorities. Yeah, the state tells you how to worship. Some here in the United States may, considering the assault on Christianity in the United States, expect similar requirements in America to emerge as well, with the added caveat that the churches must preach approved messages such as regarding homosexuality, a.k.a. homo-fascism. Liberal leftists have already attempted such a move in Houston, Texas, so there is no doubt that won't be the last time we experience such an assault against religious freedom. Now, this is how Barack Obama has talked about endlessly about pivoting toward Asia. Well, look at the climate change agreement that he negotiated with the ChiComms, and not too long after that, here we go. They just blatantly and openly crack down on the church, crack down on the democracy. seekers, the democracy demonstrators in Hong Kong. They're just tightening the grip on Hong Kong as well. And then we look at what's happening in Cuba. Barack Obama recognizes the Castro regime, and look what happens, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, to listen to Barack Obama, you'd think that his opening to Cuba was bringing about the budding of a beautiful red rose. Well, that red rose is in flames. And it's too bad you can't ask the three pro-democracy activists and gentlemen who took the ones, Barack Obama's diplomatic initiative, as a cue to kick off the peaceful Rose Revolution, as it might have been designated, as the Castros have had them quickly and summarily jailed. Here's a quote from theguardian.com. See, a London newspaper. Once again, you got to go overseas to find out what's happening that the American media doesn't want you to know. Cuban police have, quote, detained, close quote, at least three leading dissidents ahead of a planned free speech demonstration in the Plaza de la Revolucion. The arrests of Antonio Rodiles, Eliezer Avila, and Reynaldo Escobar look set to be the biggest test yet of diplomatic relations with the U.S. since they were restored earlier this month after 53 years of tension. The crackdown came around lunchtime on Tuesday, just hours before local performance artist Tania Bruguera was due to stage an open microphone event in Havana's most politically sensitive square. Police had denied Bruguera a permit for the Yo Tambien Exio, I also demand, a demonstration, and warned activists not to participate, but several had indicated their willingness to participate in this test case for public dissent. The authorities did not give them the chance. End of quote. Now, maybe Senors Rodiles, Avila, and Escobar were attempting to demonstrate to Barack Obama that embracing the Castros will not open up Cuba, but only prop up the communist regime and sell the poor enslaved Cuban people down the proverbial river. You have to admit that this is more than a little embarrassing to the White House, which is why you have to go to the British media to find out what's going on there. Embarrassing to the White House to have his new buddies in Havana very publicly crush a pro-democracy demonstration barely 2 weeks after his much ballyhooed, tiresomely overhyped, slavishly bow-filled diplomatic breakthrough. It's almost as if they don't fear us or international isolation at all. Perhaps the preceding 55 years should have been a good clue, and are possessed of overweening confidence that the ObamaCare monarch doesn't give a damn what they do to their own subjects, but is rather taking notes for after his own coup d'etat. Will Red Berry interrupt his Hawaiian occupation to even put on a jacket, come before the hastily assembled press jackals and deliver an empty, lectury, condemnatory statement? Are you kidding? He's probably so zonked on Cuban chum that he's sleeping it off in the bunker in the 16th green at Capolei. Capolei? I can't. Kapolei. Capolei. It's a golf course, a very ritzy golf course in Hawaii, where he's vacationing. I call it Barack Obama's occupation of Hawaii. I tell you, he can hardly wait to play Che Guevara links, folks. I'm telling you right now. Story number 10. Snow in Southern California. Yeah, snow in SoCal, folks. Southern California is finally getting a taste of the cold Arctic chill the rest of the nation has been experiencing for quite a while. This was Tuesday, after Gibbs reported on the scene at politicalpistachio.com. Tuesday, they got some rain, and the unusually cold storm brought much-needed snow to California mountains. The high deserts experienced icy conditions. north of Riverside County, up in central and northern California, their temperatures got low enough that although these chilling temperatures were not record-breaking, they were lower than normal and causing quite a shiver. Though the snow and rain levels weren't significant enough to march them, California that is, toward declaring an end to the man-made drought on behalf of the Delta smelt. The little bit of wet weather was being received as favorably. It was being welcomed as far as alleviating to any degree possible the ongoing California drought. As for the temperatures, New Year's Eve and early New Year's morning were expected to get near freezing. You have no idea. Now, then, interestingly enough, quickly following that, there was an earthquake in Southern California. Now, of course, it was magnitude 3.9, which in California is known as stability, bedrock. Wet roads, icy temperatures, and an earthquake combined for an abrupt awakening for many Southern California residents on Tuesday afternoon. A short, noticeable earthquake shook Southern California near San Pedro, centered just off the coast about halfway to Catalina Island. Boasting a reasonable 3.9 magnitude, the earthquake only lasted a few seconds, but served as a reminder to L.A. locals that it had been a while since SoCal had a major quake, and they're due to be hit sometime in the near future. It's something to take note of. And then, wow, this was remarkable. Here's a headline at politicalpistachio.com. A snowy morning in Murrieta and Temecula, California, or what those of us up here in the state of Washington refer to as a dusting. In fact, you look at some of the pictures, in Doug's yard anyway, you can still see the grass. But, you know, it is still snow in Southern California and not in the mountains either. I mean, I'm sure it was gone by noon. You know, where I live in western Washington, in the Puget Sound region of the state of Washington, Seattle, Tacoma area, it doesn't snow all that much. You have to go east of the mountains to eastern Washington to really get snow that sticks for any length of time. Here in where I live, it'll snow sometimes, but it generally doesn't last much longer than a week. So I'm sure that this little dusting of snow in SoCal. It's interesting seeing pictures with snow. Snow weighing down palm leaves. It's kind of interesting. But I'm sure it didn't last much longer till noon, at least in Murrieta and Temecula. Now, in the northwest corner of Murrieta, okay, I was thinking it was northwest corner of Riverside County. Doug has a friend in La Cresta, a committee above Murrieta. And the picture there, you don't see grass. You don't see any green. All you see is white. This is in Southern California, folks. And I'm not talking about in the mountains. Actual snow. This must have been 2 or 3 or maybe 4 inches of snow in Southern California. And up in the mountains, down where the palm trees are. So those of you out there who still cling to the global warming myth, boy, you're losing ground at an ever-increasing pace. You have no idea. And speaking of another place where it's cold, Mars. Now, how is Mars part of the big stories of the week? Well, an imam in the United Arab Emirates has issued a fatwa against colonizing Mars. Yeah. I mean, this isn't a big story, but I thought it was funny, so I threw it in there anyway. Besides, it's Mars, it's space exploration. That's one of my interests. sci-fi fan, Star Trek, Star Wars, Robert Heinlein, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the quote from jihadwatch.com. They misspelled it. One of the weirdest fatwas was made by United Arab Emirates General Authority for Islamic Affairs and Endowments prohibiting life on Mars. The authority said living on Mars was against Islam, responding to the Dutch-run project Mars One, which proclaims plans for a human colony on the red planet by 2025, so a decade from now. The authorities' argument was that heading to Mars would resemble a suicide given the danger such a step could involve. Well, goodness gracious, whatever happened to the Islamic sense of adventure? Aren't we endlessly lectured by Barack Obama that Islam was the flower of human civilization, advancement, achievement, when Christendom was wallowing in the medieval inquisitionary slime? I invent terms all the time, folks. I would think that the Muslims would want to beat the infidels to the red planet, actually. After all, a world named after the Roman god of war would seem to be a perfect fit for the holy warriors of Allah. Or perhaps Islam simply prefers conquering and enslaving existing civilizations instead of having to go through the risk, toil, and drudgery of establishing and building up its own. Of course, there are some ancient astronaut theories that hold that aliens bombarded Mars in the distant past, so maybe it was the Muslims who did so. Who knows? What do you think? Story number 8: Sony release of the interview underwhelms. We talked about last week how Sony changed its mind, did an about face, and decided to release the film The Interview, the Seth Rogen, James Franco farce about two bumbling TV reporters who were sent by the CIA to North Korea to assassinate dictator Kim Jong-un, the dictator, the corn-fed despot, as I refer to him. And of course, there's one reason and one reason only why Sony did this, and to try to recoup some of the $44 million cost of the movie. Well, I don't know if they expected to recoup all of it, but I think they were hoping to recoup more of it than they did. Let's see. So they wanted. I think they were expecting somewhere closer to, probably. Well, through a combination of releasing it online for $5.99 a viewing, on video on demand, and then releasing it in 300 theaters, which is a very limited release. I think they were hoping to combine to recoup the $44 million cost of the movie. Well, they only brought in $2.8 million in theaters. And online, they made about $15 million, so that's less than half the cost of the interview. So I guess that guarantees they're going to have to make a sequel. Now, the interesting thing to me was that there was, I saw something come across the headlines this week about whether or not Red China knew about the Sony hack. Now, well, in fact, the person who brought it up was on the Sunday shows last week. In fact, it was on CNN's State of the Union. Was South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, and it was based upon the fact that the NOCOs basically can't go to the bathroom without ChiComms approval. And it just illustrates to me how valuable an asset North Korea is to the ChiComms, because it's the ultimate good cop, bad cop act, good cop, bad cop scenario. You got the North Koreans, who are the villains, the loose cannon, building nukes and selling nuclear and missile technology to every jihadist regime in the Middle East and every jihadist terrorist group, and so on and so forth. And the ChiComms who are they're reasonable and they're responsible members of the international community, and that's a very North Korea is a very useful asset for the ChiComms because they can do things by proxy using the no-cos that they don't want to do themselves for PR or propaganda purposes. And so it becomes difficult to believe that the ChiComms didn't at least know about the North Korean hack of Sony. The question is, did the ChiComms authorize it? Now, it's entirely believable that the no-cos would do that because it would attack Sony, hack Sony's computers, engage in cyber terrorism, because the movie The Interview made fun of the corn-fed dictator, Kim Jong-un. But might it have been sending a message to all of us, to the United States, to the West, particularly the United States, though, about how totally vulnerable we are here in ObamaCare to being hacked? I mean, now, I don't know for a fact that the computer networks of a movie studio are more vulnerable than those of, say, our electronic infrastructure, our electrical grid, nuclear power plants, the Pentagon. I mean, you hope that core infrastructure and military computer networks in this country would be better protected than those of a movie studio, but maybe they're not. And of course, the ChiComms are much further along as far as cyber warfare than the no-cos are. I mean, I've been reading articles, news stories, analyses for years about the ChiComms advancements in nanotechnology. So that wouldn't be just software; that would be hardware as well, or firmware, if you will. Nanites released into American computer networks, whether it be military or electrical infrastructure, core infrastructure. I just can't help wondering if the ChiComms, via the no-cos, were trying to send us a message. Now, there are some who believe that the Sony hackers weren't the North Koreans, they weren't the ChiComms, but rather were domestic, and that it was speculated this week, it was at firstlook.org, there was an alleged report that the hackers of the interview, the hackers that cyber attacked Sony, news organization. Now, they didn't mention what it was. So, now, are these the same hackers that actually did hack Sony, or are they just copycats? Well, that's also the nature of this kind of thing, where the perpetrators, the identity of the perpetrators is kind of nebulous. You don't know exactly who did it. It's just easy to believe the no-cos did it with regard to Sony and the Interview movie because, it was poking fun at Kim Jong-un. Maybe that was the ChiComms using the no-cos to send a message, or maybe it was domestic hackers, or maybe these domestic hackers that are threatening to cyber attack an American news organization were just copycats. Of course, it also raises the question of what news organization they might be targeting. They didn't really say that, although I think any domestic hackers who would attack an American news organization, do something criminal, in other words, let's just say they probably aren't going to be targeting the New York Times if they're being driven at all by ideology and partisan politics. In which case, look out, Fox News, One American News, Washington Times, New York Post, KCAA, or at least at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on Saturdays. Story number 7, I believe. We're almost up to number 5. Steve Scalise. Now, who is Steve Scalise, you might be asking? This is one of those questions that the answer to which most Americans would have no idea. Steve Scalise is the House Majority Whip. Has been since Kevin McCarthy was promoted to House Majority Leader following the shocking loss in his GOP congressional primary. A former House Majority Leader and now former, well, I guess it'll be former this next week, Congressman Eric Cantor of Virginia. Steve Scalise is the House Majority Whip. He's from Louisiana's 1st Congressional District, and of course, as you might imagine, he was singled out. He is the first salvo in the left's bleep storm of scandal mongering, which is what they always do when they're out of power. So this is not surprising in any sense. And a story came out that alleged that Steve Scalise addressed a white supremacist convention in 2002. Now, first of all, 12 years ago. Really? I mean, Steve Scalise ran for the House. He first ran for the House in 2008. So are you telling me, is the media, the Cuba media, telling us that the fact that Steve Scalise allegedly addressed a white supremacist convention in 2002 that never came out before now? Nobody ever knew about it until now? Really? It didn't come out in 2008 when he first ran for the House? I find that very difficult to believe. Now, this was the group was called the European American Unity and Right Organization, or EURO. And it was affiliated with David Duke. Now, of course, David Duke, everyone knows David Duke. He ran for governor of Louisiana back in the 90s. He was a white supremacist. David Duke's been around for a long, long time in political terms. And so, see, that puts a familiar white supremacist name to it, because there are so few white supremacists that anybody knows or knows about. Now, I didn't write about this. I didn't talk about it on Hard Starboard Radio. I didn't write about it at politicalpistachio.com right away. I waited because I knew the other shoe was going to drop. It always does with these stories. Waited a couple of days, and then there it came. Bam. It turns out that Steve Scalise, when he was speaking at that facility, the same facility that the European American Unity and Rights Organization was using in June of 2002, but he was not addressing that group. He was addressing a civic group that was using the same facility. And he was talking about tax and fiscal policy. So no, House Majority Whip Steve Scalise is not a white supremacist. He was not addressing a white supremacist convention in 2002. He was speaking about tax and fiscal policy to a civic group in the same facility, in the same venue. Not the David Duke-led European American Unity and Rights Organization. So I called it the fizzling of white supremagate. And I'd like to think that when House Speaker John Boehner stood by and supported House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, that this was why, for the same reason. The other shoe is going to drop. Now the caveat here, and this gets back to the Republican Party's nickname, the Stupid Party. Representative Scalise at first admitted to having addressed the white supremacist convention. He actually admitted to something that he didn't do, because there were people who were there in that venue at that time, on that day, And they're the ones who said, no, actually, Scalise wasn't. He didn't address the white supremacist convention. He was addressing a civic group on tax and fiscal policy. And you know who reported that, ladies and gentlemen? Slate.com. Not Fox News, not One America News, not Hard Starboard Radio, not American Daily Review, not Constitution Radio. Slate. Not exactly a right-wing website, folks. So, but that's just the first salvo. There will be much more of that to come, trust me. Story number 6, and these are several stories. I'll go through them quickly because Jennifer may already be waiting in the queue. Obama forces soldiers to move their wedding so he can play through. Did you hear about this? Being king means never having to yell, "For!" Here's a quote from the news story. Natalie Heimel and her fiancé, Edward Malou Jr., a pair of captains in the Army, were walking from their wedding rehearsal on Saturday at the 16th Tee Box at Kaneohe, I think that's how you pronounce it, Clipper Golf Course in Hawaii when they were informed that they'd have to move their wedding, which was scheduled for the next day. Why? Barack Obama wanted to play golf there. He wanted to play through. It was the second time that day that the couple heard from the nation's commander-in-chief, who's offended. Now, here's the kicker to this. Whose affinity for golf has at times caused political headaches for the White House. Stationed in Hawaii and knowing the president spends his Christmas holiday on the islands, they invited him to their ceremony on a lark. They had received a letter earlier on Saturday saying Obama regretted he couldn't come and wishing them happiness on their wedding day. So not couldn't, wouldn't, because he always has so much presidential stuff on his agenda, like his $10 billion and third round divot launching. So I mean, here it is. In fact, as Warner Todd Houston put at LibertyNews.com, not only could Barack Obama have attended because, after all, he was right there, but he made the couple move to a different location so he could skip their wedding and play golf where their wedding was originally scheduled. Or, in other words, just one more extended middle finger to our men and women in uniform. Then here's another story under the umbrella of story number 6. Obama's Maginot Line of stonewalls. Now, to give you an idea, we all know about Barack Obama's blanket stonewalling of all his various and sundry scandals, but did you know how many of them there actually are? 47. Earlier this year, 47 inspectors general, the officials charged with fighting corruption and waste and wrongdoing of federal agencies, sent a letter to Darrell Iss's House Government Reform and Oversight Committee complaining that organizations ranging from the EPA to the Justice Department were impeding their investigations by withholding information, despite the fact that federal law specifically forbids withholding that information. These are not a bunch of Republican operatives trying to score political points. Those 47 inspectors general comprised more than half of all such officials, and many who signed the letter were appointed by Barack Obama. Their complaint is that the federal agencies treat them more or less like they do members of Congress, thwarting them, withholding documents, and obstructing investigations. Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General for the Justice Department, came to the Oversight Committee practically begging them for a means by which the DOJ, the federal law enforcement department, might be forced to follow the law it is supposed to be enforcing. It's very clear to me, he testified, just as it is to the Inspector General community, that the Inspector General Act of 1978 entitles Inspectors General to access all documents and records within the agency's possession. Each of us firmly believes that Congress meant what it said in Section 6A of the IG Act, that Inspectors General must be given complete, timely, and unfiltered access to agency records. But under the leadership of Attorney General Eric Holder, the DOJ did no such thing. Horowitz notes that the DOJ specifically tried to withhold information related to the investigation of Operation Fast and Furious. So 47 different inspectors general are being stonewalled by the Obama regime. And they're blatantly doing it. They are blatantly doing it. The law specifically forbids withholding that information. Just to give you an idea of how lawless and openly lawless the Obama regime is. And how about this story? Obama to kick off 2015 with avalanche of regulations. And this was for Dick Morris originally reported this on Newsmax. Let's see. Let me find it here. The remainder of the Obama presidency will be replete with a panoply of regulations you can't imagine, Dick Morris said. He'll attempt to send the Internet into an international authority, perhaps the UN, so that our enemies can control it. He's going to make unionization virtually universal in the private sector by basically stacking it so that the unions can win any union election they choose to bring by changing the rules of the game. The EPA is going to regulate streams on private property. It's going to regulate every institution, every hospital, every school in the United States in terms of emissions. If you think you have money for education, forget about it. You're going to have to convert your heating system instead. And, of course, since you don't have money for health care either, I guess you're going to get a stiff fine for not being able to afford environmental protection as well as health insurance. It makes me wonder. I mean, we're talking 28,000 pages. I guess it would have been on New Year officially New Year's Day. 28,000 pages were added to the Federal Register 2 days ago. I mean, it makes me wonder. Will that include implants in our noses and rectums that will regulate the amount of CO2 we can excrete? Is it too late to get one of those I Can't Breathe T-shirts? I mean, his whole approach in foreign policy will be to tilt directly in favor of our enemies, in favor of them, but against our friends. On healthcare reform, he's going to change it so that as much as he has to. Well, he's not deferring the individual mandate on Obamacare, is he? Try to conform to court decisions. He's going to try to continue it, even though the courts may be against them. Of course, he doesn't conform to anyone or anything. We all have to conform to him, or else. And on, of course, immigration. Barack Obama is going to complete the process he began with the Immigration Proclamation. This isn't his last amnesty. Although Dick Morris seems to think that Congress will confront Barack Obama in February when DHS funding runs out, and that they'll fight him and that they'll win. I don't know what gives him that idea. I don't know what evidence there is to support that. And then just a brief thing here. Obama sticking with 1 in 5 women are raped lie. This gets back to the Rolling Stone and Lena Dunham book libel cases. And the total lie built on that 1 in 5 women on college campuses is raped, which, like I said before about this, if that were true, wouldn't you think we would have heard about it before now, long before now? But then by the same token, the sexual revolution has taught men to look upon women as sex objects, so self-fulfilling prophecy perhaps, but not to this magnitude. Well, the White House is not withdrawing that its adherence. In fact, it's still on whitehouse.gov. 1 in 5 women are raped on college campuses. Now, the reason I mentioned this, and I wanted to include this in the stack today. Do you know who is challenging that? Let me give you the quote. Regardless of which studies are most accurate, according to the Department of Justice's National Institute of Justice webpage on measuring campus sexual assaults, the oft-quoted statistic that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 American college women will be raped during her college years is not supported by the scientific evidence. So in essence, what you have is, in effect, Eric the Red Holder telling Barack Obama that the rape culture and war on women scams are done, and defeat doesn't get any harder to deny than that, but they're still denying it. It's like they just, it's their just totalitarian instincts. I say it, Barack Obama says it, therefore it must be true, as in there's no choice. Reality, he's the master of all reality, so he must conform. Reality must conform to whatever Barack Obama says on any given day. Story number 5, Mario Cuomo. Excuse me. On Thursday, Mario Cuomo passed away at the age of 82. Of course, he was a former 3-term governor of New York. And everybody said in 1992 that he was the presumptive Democrat presidential nominee to take on then-sitting President George H.W. Bush. And I'll tell you what, if Mario Cuomo had not decided not to run, none of us would ever have heard of Bill Clinton. Now, I don't know if Mario Cuomo would have defeated President Bush because, as has been noted in many places, the American voters, until Barack Obama had not elected a northern liberal president since JFK, at least. So it's conjecture whether Mario Cuomo could have defeated President Bush 41 in 1992, but I guarantee you nobody would ever have heard of Bill Clinton, because Bill Clinton is the candidate who emerged from the flotsam in the wake of Mario Cuomo deciding and then reconsidering and then ultimately deciding not to seek the presidency in 1992. So just think about that. If Mario Cuomo had decided to run in 1992, we would never have heard of Bill Clinton. We would never have heard of Hillary Clinton. And Bush 41 might actually have gotten a second term. Talk about focal points in history. But Mario Cuomo, head of the Cuomo dynasty, of course his son Andrew Cuomo is now the term governor of New York. Mario Cuomo, a patriarch of the Cuomo dynasty, dead at 82 years of age. Story number 4. I think that's right. Yeah, story number 4, and there's a ton of these, so I won't have a whole lot of time to spend on them. Last Saturday, Barack Obama declared that racial tensions are easing. In fact, they've never been better since he's been president. Yeah. I'll wait for the hysterical laughter to die down. What else we got here? Anti-police protesters, or as I prefer to refer to them, black insurrectionists, although the protesters aren't all black. So you could just say New York City left-wing insurrectionists. Now, if you look at some of the pictures of the protests in New York City, you might want to look closer at the placards, the signs they're holding. They have the web address revcom.us, revcom.us. That is the web address, the website for the United States Communist Party. So yes, left-wing protesters, left-wing insurrectionists in New York protesting police brutality, that's the pretext anyway, are using signs given them by the United States Communist Party. Big surprise, I know. Let's see. Bay Area Black Lives Matter protests greet New Year. Racial division greeted the new year in the form of demonstrations in Oakland and San Francisco as the erroneous narrative that police are gunning for blacks continues to encourage such protests. As a result of the crowds, Oakland transit lines had to be detoured. Suggested numbers placed the protest at 100 to 200 persons, with a large police presence marching along with them. The irony. Let's see what else we got here. Now, we are now seeing pro-police counter demonstrations, folks. Newton's third law: for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. It may not apply exactly or proportionately to populist political fracases, but it's encouraging to see that even after 6 years of Obamanist rule, it does still apply. And we're talking thousands of law enforcement officers and civilians alike gathered last Saturday, a week ago, to pay their final respects to one of two New York officers gunned down as they sat in their patrol car. And scores of people joined in solidarity at pro-police rallies across the country. So they're not huge, but there are a lot of them. Rallies were planned to show support for police in the wake of several high-profile police shootings of unarmed civilians, including Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Garner in New York, and the December 20th killings of New York officers Rafael Ramos and Wei-Jan Liu. In fact, the pro-police rallies were held in cities such as Atlantic City, Houston, and Cleveland. So you're actually getting pro-police counter demonstrations. And more. All I can say is more. Just like Agent Smith said in Matrix Reloaded, more. And then I noticed this the other day. I wanted to throw it in here. I got to make a real quick mention of it, but it's very symptomatic, I think, of where we're headed with this. It's a combination of radicalism, the radicalism of black racists, and the absurdity. Target stores, Target, they're being targeted for having a white girl in its Annie promotion. Now, Annie is a movie that came out within last couple of weeks. It's kind of the equivalent for the parallel I would draw is, remember that movie The Wiz in 1978? It was a black version of The Wizard of Oz. Well, this is the same idea, only with the classic movie Annie, and the title character is played by an African American girl. But the promotional materials, especially for the related merchandise, clothing, and such, is in part portrayed by a white version of Annie, and of course that has the Black Klan all up in arms. But the reason why, because nobody seems to care what the reason why they just assume, it's racism. Well, no, actually, it's not racism. It's because the cast, and by the way, it's not an all-black cast. There are several white people, obviously, to play the antagonists, the villains. But the black cast, for whatever reason, couldn't spare the time to go and actually pose for these promotional photographs and commercials. That's why. So no, there was Target not racist. They're not trying to not have actual black cast members. The Black Annie, whose name was I don't think I can pronounce this, Kuvenshani Wallace, and who knows, she may be a star someday. But she wasn't able and didn't pose for the Annie merchandise ads and videos. So I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. You want to call them racist for that? Well, be my guest, I guess. And of course, the new Black Panthers that came out just this morning are still calling. In fact, what does it say here? Now suggesting that African Americans get armed and prepare for race war in 2015, or rather an escalation in the race war. And this came straight from Malik Shabazz himself. Seems to be no end to these Shabazes. So let's see. Story number 3. Obama abandons that's not. Is that what I wanted? No. Yes. Obama surrenders Afghanistan. Here, there, and everywhere, Barack Hussein Obama betrays and abandons every country, every people who ever trusted or relied upon the late, great United States, and surges the new old America stand towards humiliating, ignominious defeat. And just as with the Cuban Democrats, it's the innocent indigenous left behind who pay the price. Now, officially, we have ended combat operations in Afghanistan with the end of 2014. There's a little residual, a few thousand troops, which will be withdrawn by the end of 2016. Well, basically, we have turned Afghanistan back over to the Taliban. Now, who is going to suffer from that the most? Well, here's a quote from Reuters.com. The United States invaded Afghanistan in 2001 to oust the Taliban and stayed on in part to build a Western-style democracy, including legal safeguards for women. A quota was mandated for women in public offices such as parliament and provincial councils. Earlier this year, however, conservative lawmakers rolled back the quota reserved for women in provincial councils from 20 down to 25%. Now, last Sunday marked the formal end to the international combat mission in Afghanistan, and while huge progress has been made getting millions of girls in school and putting women in positions of formal authority, it has had frustratingly little impact on these power dynamics, the UN-backed Afghanistan Research and Evaluation Unit said in a recent report. Today, women's rights are one of the feared losses shared by Afghanis, and the world as international troops prepare to withdraw completely. So, Obama withdraws from Afghanistan, women and children, or women and girls, hardest hit. Can you imagine what's going to happen to women in Afghanistan? Any woman who has ever served in any public office or capacity, any woman who has ever not worn a burqa in public, can you imagine what's going to happen to them once we have completely withdrawn from Afghanistan? I know I wouldn't want to imagine it if I were them. I don't want to imagine. Heck, I don't want to imagine it. Period. And then story number 2: Gitmo Jailbreak. Came out this week that Obama had. Now you got to understand this. CAIR, the CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, is an Islamist front organization, a jihadi front organization. Well, guess what? They're considered a jihadist front organization even by the United Arab Emirates. They have CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, on their list of foreign terrorist groups, United Arab Emirates. So even a Muslim country recognizes that the Muslim Brotherhood, which is in essence is the Council on American Islamic Relations, even the United Arab Emirates recognizes them as a jihadist organization. But guess who refuses to heed that? I mean, the FBI recognizes it as well. The FBI, the Obama FBI, broke off contact with the Council on American Islamic Relations in 2009, over 5 years ago, because of the evidence linking the group and its founders to Hamas, which the U.S. does list as a terrorist organization. Well, they're an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, not only has the Obama administration, the Obama White House, not broken off contact with CAIR and therefore with the Muslim Brotherhood, they continue to have high-level meetings. High-level meetings with CAIR officials. And the head of CAIR has been a White House guest and frequently visits the State Department. Let's see. Because the FBI's former expert on the Muslim Brotherhood network helped uncover a Brotherhood conspiracy to overthrow the United States by civilization jihad following a raid on a suspected terrorist home in Northern Virginia. This is an enemy who is cunning, patient, well-supported, and well-organized, including, it would seem, by the Obama administration. Now that, like Bill Cosby used to say, I tell you that story to tell you this one. Did you know? See, Barack Obama, remember he promised in 2008 he was going to close Gitmo? Close Guantanamo Bay, Camp X-ray at Guantanamo Bay. And he tried to do it, but even the Democrat-dominated Congress in 2009 and 2010 wouldn't cooperate because of the public outcry. I'm not sure why. It's the same public that elected him, so and he wasn't bashful about that campaign promise, but I digress. And so he was never able to keep his campaign promise to close Guantanamo Bay by the end of 2009. It was the end of his first year in office. Well, he's doing it now. He's just doing it piecemeal and under the radar, and at an increasing rate. Remember the Bo Bergdahl Taliban 5 swap? It didn't end last May. It's been continuing ever since. It's to be ongoing. And I might add, that includes a nuclear jihadist. Who am I talking about? Well, we're talking about, let me just give you the quote from frontpagemagazine.com. The last releases saw terrorists rated as high risk freed by Barack Obama. They included fighters with experience on the battlefield and covert operations. Obama set loose a suicide bomber, a document forger, and a bomb maker who trained other terrorists to make bombs. Those are exactly the sort of enemies whose license to jihad will cost lives, but that's nothing compared to Obama's latest gift to the jihad. When Mohammed Zahir was caught, among his possessions was found a small sealed can marked in Russian, heavy water U-235, 150 grams. According to the classified report, the uranium had been identified by Zahir in his memorandum as being intended for the production of an atomic bomb. Zahir was not just another captured jihadist. He was the Secretary General of the Taliban's Intelligence Directorate and was in contact with top leaders of the Taliban and al-Qaeda. His possessions included a fax with questions intended for Osama bin Laden, and he had been arrested on suspicion of possessing Stinger missiles. But that may not have been even the worst of it. Among the items was a notebook containing references to large sugar shipments to Washington, D.C. Investigators believed that sugar was used as a code word for heroin. The Black Sea stops mentioned in the notebook are major hubs for smuggling heroin and for nuclear smuggling as well. Not only was Mohammed Zahir a terrorist kingpin, but he was also a drug kingpin, and the notebook suggested that his eye was on the United States of America. Nuclear jihadist, and Barack Obama has released him, and he didn't just... There's no intermediary here. He didn't... Barack Obama... The Obama regime didn't release Mohammed Zahir to Qatar for a year or any other way station. He let him go right back to Afghanistan, right as we are withdrawing from Afghanistan. So I mean, I've never been one of those who believed that Barack Obama is a Muslim. I mean, it's a little too easy, actually, I think. But quite honestly, I can't blame, and I still don't really believe that because I don't think he would take a demotion under Allah. He's his own God. You know, he is God. No, he's not going to take it. He's not going to take that demotion. He's not going to take that pay cut, so to speak. But I can't. When you see stories like this, you can't. I can't blame people who think that he is a Muslim, quite honestly, because he certainly seems to be doing everything he possibly can to assist the global jihad. Jennifer!
Hey, stranger.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm busy but good. Busy
Any
good.
snow? Any snow?
No, heck no, just lots of rain. About to float
wow.
away.
Because apparently there, at least a few days ago, there was up to 4 inches of snow in Southern California.
We've hardly, I know that was, there was a picture on Facebook of a palm tree with snow on it. There's something you don't see very often.
Yeah, you can say that again. Oh, by the way, the Carolina Panthers are up 3-0. Is that second? Yeah, with 11:26 left in the first. No, it must be first quarter. Yeah, first quarter. I said I would give NFL updates. So, the Carolina Panthers up 0 on the Arizona Cardinals in the first quarter. 11. Now it's 10:45 left. So, if anybody cares.
Well, I don't.
Okay, well, so noted.
But I'm probably in the minority, so I'll digress. That's okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, how have you been doing? Did you have a good Christmas and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, I spent it with my dad. We always go over there every year. This may be the last year we go over to where he is. We may be moving him over here sometime in the next year. So that. Putting his house up for sale finally, kind of.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, well, we got a friend who is a close friend, a trusted friend who's a real estate agent, so he's going to be doing his best.
Well, that's good. My mom's trying to get out of her house, and it's like an acre. I mean, we take care of it for her, but she just has a lot more room than she needs. But her house has been on the market for like 3 years off and on, and she just can't. It's 2 bedrooms, so that's a real bummer for most people, for a lot of people. So we're just hoping to get her out of there sometime.
Is it
not good around here.
Have you listed it yet, or is it already on the market?
Oh yeah, it's been on the market for a long time.
How long? Like a year?
Oh, about 3 years. Actually, yeah.
I wish you hadn't said that.
Well, this is Indiana, so where you're at might be a little better.
I hope
just call
so.
Barack; he'll fix it for you. Bless his heart.
Yeah. I keep seeing those banner ads. Barack Obama will give you, will help pay your mortgage or whatever.
Hey, I was interesting that you were covering the golf game and moving the wedding and everything, because I didn't repost that because I wasn't sure. One source I had said that he didn't know about it, and so then he called and apologized. And I thought, that doesn't sound like Barack Obama to me. So I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so in character that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his golf game is much more important than their wedding. I don't think he blinked an eye.
Since they sent the couple in question sent an invitation to him on a lark. I mean, I'm sure they didn't expect him to actually show up, but if he'd wanted to, he could have. And it occurs to me that if that had been a homosexual couple, you think he might not have? Think he might have attended?
Or a black activist that had been in some of the protests, and he'd been right there in the front row.
Well, I mean, there were 3 administration representatives at Michael Brown's funeral, so I don't.
And how many were there at those cops' funerals? Wait a minute, let me think.
Oh, hold on a sec. I got the perfect audio for this. Just let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, here it is. Yeah,
it's sad. It makes me sick to see people continue to make excuses for him. I just have to get away from those discussions because I get so mad. It's just the ignorance.
I giggle.
Yeah.
Actually. But that's the only thing you can do. I mean, it's like Captain Kalin once said. Sometimes in life, laughter is the only rational response.
The only thing that keeps you sane.
Well, I mean, by
it's
this
really
time,
hard to have a Christian attitude when you're speaking to people like that. Anytime you get into a liberal discussion, they run out of substance in like the second sentence, and then they start attacking. And that's when you know it's a waste of time. You know?
Substance.
Yeah, exactly. What a foreign
substance. Yeah, well, you know, it's like the Steve Scalise. Is it Scalise
right.
or Scalise? Scalise. I thought it was Scalise. So I'll just go with that.
That's what it looks like.
The white supremagate, as I refer to it. And I'm actually surprised they waited that long to come up with that. The idea that Steve Scalise addressed a white supremacist convention in 2002. I mean, what was the first thing that came to your mind when you heard that?
The Jeremiah Wright, the hypocrisy.
Yeah, well, I'll admit that's not the first thing that came to my mind, but it is a good thing. That is a good. What came to my mind is, are we supposed to seriously believe that if the House Majority Whip had addressed a white supremacist convention in 2002, that nobody would have known about it until now?
Right. Yeah, that's true. And has anybody heard of Robert Byrd?
Yeah, Sheets Byrd. Yeah.
Hello.
Well, yeah. I mean, Scalise first ran for the House in 2008. Might it not have come out then? Really?
Right.
Wouldn't have come out.
Well, why did it now? Why do you think it did now?
Wasn't there something that happened on December 4th or November 4th? I can't quite remember what it was. But.
Oh yeah, wait a minute.
Well, it's been so long since Republicans had enough power to make them to where the left resumed its scandal mongering.
Yeah.
The politics of personal destruction, the Democrat attack machine. I guess we could be a little forgiven a little bit for kind of, you know, being a little rusty on our anticipation of such things, but it didn't.
There is no depth that they won't plumb. I mean, nothing is too low for them to go after. It's just amazing with like that CNN. Remember when Bristol was? Oh, she was cursed and the guy kind of abused her, and she just thought that was the best thing in the world.
Oh,
Can you imagine if Fox News said something like that about Malia Obama was abused and they were enjoying it? Just imagine the outcry.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And I would be too. I'd be right there with them. I mean, you just don't attack, you know, the kids. But if they're Republican kids, then they're open season, especially if they're Palin's kids. I mean, that's double trouble.
Well, you know, right tribe, wrong tribe. I've been saying it for 6 years. I mean, it's a lot of these things are now. I feel like I'm being echoed all the time. That's why I coined the term Jasmia's echo syndrome, because it seems a lot of these things that are finally starting to be recognized for what they are and called out for what they are. I mean, I've been saying on my podcasts and on Constitution Radio for years. It's gotten so egregious that it's actually starting to be being recognized more broadly. But
well, obviously it was, and because with the wins in November, no matter what, that millionaires millions had tried to. Oh, what was his name? Is it Steyer?
Tom Steyer, or King
yeah.
as I've referred to.
You know, in spite of people like him and George Soros, you know, we still won. But I think the amnesty thing was just one way for Obama to throw a wet blanket on our victory. You know, because look how soon after that he did, and that did throw a wet blanket on. It's like, oh man.
Well, of course, the suspicion of same was a lot of what fueled the victory in the first place.
Mm-hmm. It's his way of getting back at the American people.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about it for a long time, long before the election, about the next 2 years at minimum are going to be ugly, ugly, ugly. It's going to be uglier than anybody has ever pictured, ever imagined.
Do you think our numbers can stop him or at least slow him down?
Well, I mean, he's already operating outside the law, so it's going to be a question of, do congressional Republicans in the 114th Congress will they use the tools the Constitution provides them mainly defunding, and if it came to it,
right.
impeachment, which I don't think will ever happen. But
no, I don't either.
Will they use the power of the purse, like DHS funding runs out in February? 90 seconds. Well, I guess I got to close this down because I got to get over to KCAA for the third hour. Saturday afternoon extravaganza, Constitution Radio. Jasmine is sitting in for Douglas V. Gibb. Come on over to KCAAradio.com. The show continues.
Constitution or bust. Taking back America one listener at a time. Constitution Speaker Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KCAA 1050 AM.
As we get ready to watch two games a day, one underway already from Carolina as they are in action right now. The Carolina Panthers hosting the Arizona Cardinals in the first quarter of that ball game. As we just get a score on the scoreboard, your update right now, Panthers 10, Cardinals nothing, 5:21 remaining in the first quarter. The second game of your afternoon coming live on NBC. You can watch it as we get ready for the big one as the Ravens and Steelers will battle it out. Big Ben, your thoughts on this big game?
Here we go again, right? Playing the Ravens third time, and this is probably what the NFL wanted more than anything, is seeing the two AFC North teams go at it. So I'd like to think we're different. I'd like to think we're still moving up, but I'm sure they'll say the same thing about themselves.
They've met 3 times in the past in the playoffs, and the Steelers have won all 3 of those matchups. It's going to be a big one. John Harbaugh, what do you think of Antonio Brown?
Antonio Brown is gifted. He runs all the routes. He's not just a deep threat. He's a route runner. Reverses as a punt returner, as we saw in the Cincinnati game last week. He's a multi-dimensional guy that can score at any point in time.
Sunday, we got the Bengals taking on the Colts, and then the Lions taking on the Cowboys in Jerry's World. NCAA college football, the Birmingham Bowl is a wrap as Florida beats East Carolina 28-20. NCAA college hoops action. Earlier today, we had an upset as Seton Hall takes down 6th-ranked Villanova in OT 66-61. And in double OT, number 14 Notre Dame, they hold on to beat Georgia Tech 83-76. Well, number 11 Texas, they get over Texas Tech 70-61. 12th-ranked Maryland over Minnesota 70-58 at the half right now. Number 2 Duke beating Boston College 38-22. I'm Joe Grande, NBC Sports Radio.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Rod Tanner. Well, this afternoon, we'll have sunny skies and a high of 59. It'll be clear overnight with a low of 40. Sunday, as we wrap up the weekend, we'll have a sunny, warmer day with a high of 69. We'll have clear skies, milder temperatures Sunday night with a low of 47. The warming trend continues Monday. It'll be sunny with a high of 77. Monday night, it'll be clear with a low of 52. Tuesday should be sunny and warmer with a high of 79. Wednesday, we'll have mostly sunny skies and a high of 77. Again, for this afternoon, we'll have sunshine and a high of 59. That's your weather forecast for this hour from the station that leaves no listener behind. NBC News Radio, AM 1050 KCAA.
The most diversified radio station on the dial, AM 1050 KCAA.
Here's a look at the KCAA Community Calendar. I'm Mark Westwood. Homelessness. It's a big problem in San Bernardino County. There are thousands and thousands of homeless people, many of them children. Well, you can participate in San Bernardino County's Point in Time Count coming up Thursday, January 22nd, 2015. This effort will help promote government and private grant funding and other resources for local communities to help people exit life on the streets and prevent homelessness. You can participate in the Point in Time Count to end chronic homelessness, promote community awareness of homeless issues, and participate on street counter teams. Adult volunteers are needed from every community and from all walks of life, including college students, civic nonprofit organizations, businesses and neighborhood groups, bilingual individuals, service providers, faith-based institutions, and anyone who would like to help alleviate homelessness. Please see the San Bernardino County Homeless Count website at San Bernardino County HomelessCounts.com. That's San Bernardino County HomelessCounts.com. And that's the KCAA Community Calendar. I'm Mark Westwood.
A major oil company just reported the demand for fossil fuels will remain very strong for the next 25 years. Now is the time to take a look at adding oil and gas investments to your portfolio.
More millionaires were created per capita during the Great Depression than any other time in history because they had the foresight to buy assets when prices were unusually low.
Now is a rare and unique buying opportunity to add oil and gas to your investment portfolio. But many are not expecting this window to last long. Experts like T. Boone Pickens predict prices will go back up soon.
To find out more, we have a free investor's guide you can download right now by going to crude.com/radio.
This free report tells you where the major shale plays are, why it's obvious there will be an increasing demand for oil and gas for years to come, and how you can participate.
Go to crude.com/radio now to download your 18-page free report. That's crude.com/radio.
Down to Earth Talk, a show designed to inspire, encourage, build, and bring laughter to listeners. Down to Earth Talk, where we take everyday topics and issues and put them into practical, down-to-earth terms. Topics include relationships, parenting, finances, sports, and entertainment. That's Down to Earth Talk, Saturdays 5:30 p.m. right here on KCAA 1050 AM.
KCAA Radio, AM 1050. Hey, tell a friend, AM 1050.
After 167-hour interlude, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs is back on the air on AM 1050 KCAA. KCAA FM at 106.3, KCAAradio.com. I, of course, am not Douglas V. Gibbs. I am Jasmius. I rule with a benevolent hand the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Doug is away at an activism seminar or activism class, which, I don't know, to me that's like a camel taking a correspondence course on humps. But it's like I say, and I always use a sports metaphor for this, but the greatest athletes in any sport, one, have immense talent, but number two, they work harder than anybody else to be the absolute best. And that's what Doug is doing. That's why he's at this activism course today. So, and there isn't a guest today. So the mice are playing today at Constitution Radio, AM 1050 KCAA, and Alex is there in studio, as I understand.
You understand correctly.
Hey, how are you doing, Alex?
Life is just a bowl of cherries.
Well, in my case, it was a box of chocolates. Literally, that's.
You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean that literally. My wife and daughter, when we came back from where we spent Christmas, they bought a box of chocolates on the way out of town. So, is literally. In fact, it's still there because Basically, the chocolates left in the box were all the ones that nobody wanted, which is why I don't buy chocolates. But that's just me. I should set the table here. If you want to participate in the program today, 888-909-1050. If you want to listen in on whatever handheld device you might possess, whether it's a smartphone or an iPhone or a tricorder, it's 832-999-1050 to listen in if you're not at your computer, to listen in on KCAAradio.com or the KCAA Ustream feed, or if you're not listening or not near a radio for that matter. I do want to make mention of our two YouTube channels, youtube.com/user/Hard-Starboard-Radio, where the jazmiest cam footage of the most listened to podcast on Hard Starboard this week gets uploaded. And also youtube.com/user/American Daily Review, because I just came off of 2 hours at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review going over the big stories of the week, and we'll summarize them in the last segment today. And our YouTube channel, where all 3 hours of what I call the Saturday afternoon extravaganza, 2 hours of American Daily Review, 1 hour of Constitution Radio, get all put together into 1 3-hour video, or it's really an audio with pictures, but that gets uploaded to our other YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/American Daily Review 2. So that's where to go for that. Now, the other thing that Doug did this week was that, if you were following it on politicalpistachio.com, you noticed it. And that, of course, is that Al Jazeera America contacted him to do I'm not sure if I'd call it a follow-up interview, because they interviewed him. Al Jazeera America interviewed Doug last summer during the Murrieta illegal immigration protests, and they contacted him this week, and they wanted to have him back. And as you'll be able to hear from the audio, this interview took place right after part 1 of Al Jazeera America's border series, following a family at the border on the verge of crossing into the United States. You can kind of see where their editorial bent lies. Heidi of Al Jazeera was finishing her remarks on the story as Doug was preparing to join the program. Joe, if you will please play the audio.
We're finding that it's families, not from Mexico, but from Central America, who continue to cross at peak numbers. Border Patrol continues to arrest 108 families on average a day in the Texas Rio Grande Valley. More on that in part 2 of our border series later this evening. So.
Heidi, thank you very much. Let's go now to Douglas Gibbs. He joins us via Skype. He is a radio host with KCAA-AM. He also helped organize those anti-immigration protests over the summer in Murrieta, California. Mr. Gibbs, thanks for being with us. It's been 6 months now since we saw those protests. Do you feel like you made a difference? Or, some would argue, did you make a lot of noise?
I think we did make a difference, and I think President Obama addressed the issue sooner than he wanted to because of that protest.
So based on that, in his executive action, which some critics decried, and yet Hispanics say that deportations are now up 365%, do you praise the president for what he did or condemn him?
No, I condemn him for it. The laws on the books, the immigration laws, are there to protect the receiving population from disease, from criminal elements, from a terrorist element. And by these immigrants not being properly screened through the immigration process.
Has there been a terrorist that made his way across the border that you know of?
I'm sorry?
Has there been a terrorist that has made his way across the border that you know of?
According to local reports, 1 in 3 people who cross at the San Ysidro crossing are of Middle Eastern descent.
I want to ask you this question, and by the way, I look to see if there is anything to back that up, because we haven't heard of those statistics here at Al Jazeera America. But one of the questions that keeps being asked is, are you as concerned about the Canadian border then, which a lot of people would argue is just as porous as the Mexican border, and illegals and possibly terrorists crossing there as you are about the Mexican border? And is this then an anti-Hispanic thing or a immigration thing?
Well, sure, the northern border is a concern for national security reasons. The southern border, though, is not just national security reasons, but also health concerns. Part of the reason why I participated in that protest was because 4 weeks before the protest, my granddaughter had come down with hand, foot, and mouth disease, which was not common in our area, and the increase of cases correlated with the increase of immigrants coming into the area.
But again, I ask the question, is this an anti-immigration thing or is this an anti-Hispanic thing?
It's neither. I'm pro-immigration. My wife was born in Mexico, came here legally. What I am concerned about is the screening process not being used.
So ultimately, yes or no, was this a good year or bad year when it came to immigration and the controversy?
I think it was a good year because more attention has been brought to it. More people now are involved on both sides of the issue and are voicing their opinion.
Doug Gibbs joining us again, and we thank you as always for being on our program. And I get the feeling this debate is going nowhere, anywhere fast. Doug Gibbs joining us this morning.
All right, towards the end of the show, let's look at some lighter affairs.
Going nowhere, anywhere fast. That's an interesting grammatical construct. What are your initial reactions, Alex?
Well, I'm always very, very proud of Douglas V. Gibbs. He stays on subject. He answers the pertinent questions directly and thoroughly, and he wins the argument every time he speaks. It's really refreshing.
Well, and even more to the point, he doesn't answer the loaded questions that they try to force him. That they try to force him into. Now, Doug had some post-interview notes that I want to share, and I get kind of a kick out of. First of all, he points out that the interviewer, whose name was Dale, looks kind of Hispanic. If you watch well, actually, Doug has posted the audio, but it didn't have the live video feed to it. At politicalpistachio.com, where the transcript is also available. It'll be at the top page. But the interviewer, according to Doug, looked like he was Hispanic, and Doug's speculation was that the producers at Al Jazeera hoped it would make it look like a Hispanic versus racist white guy interview. And not that you couldn't tell that that's where they were coming from just listening to the audio. The other interesting thing, which I think this is a little inevitable, this is just what any network does when they have, especially like when they're connecting to someone on Skype, is that they zoom in. Usually they zoom into like shoulder level, and that's pretty much what they did with Doug. But Doug suspects they did so to make his head look gargantuan, so that he would look more menacing. Nothing surprising about that. Now, Dale opened by explaining that Doug helped organize the anti-immigration protests in Murrieta, which is, well, first of all, they weren't anti-immigration; they were anti-illegal immigration. We should notice they didn't want to mention. They never mentioned the term illegal, just immigration. But that wasn't necessarily the case. There weren't any organizers, as Doug has pointed out on many occasions here on KCAA. He did help by inviting as many people as he knew to participate, and he's friends with the people who did most of the work regarding the immigration protests in Murrieta, and did what he could to help them. But now this is the thing that I chuckled at. When Dale asked Doug, has there been a terrorist that has made his way across the border that you know of? I mean, you could hear the disdain dripping from his voice. And when, by the way, as you heard on the video or the audio, when that question was asked, I mean, he talked right over the top of Doug, of what Doug was trying to say, and trying to answer his previous question intelligently. And Doug said, well, one out of every three crossers at the San Ysidro entrance point are Middle Eastern dead. Actually, some estimates put that as many as 40%, although that may have gone down, as Doug points out, because of the increase in illegal immigrants from Central and South America, but still, I mean, the point is made. Doug said he should have said, well, it only takes one, although I kind of think that would have been kind of a flip answer.
Well, the implication is always that we who want to solve the illegal immigration problem, that as they implied, are anti-Hispanic, and nothing. That the phrase comes back again. Nothing could be further from the truth. It is in fact true, I believe, that the Proposition 187, which would have cut off all government services to illegals, was supported by a majority of the Hispanics in Southern California. The point is that these leaders of both the Hispanic community and the black community are lying and misleading their own people. The people who suffer from illegal immigration are the people on the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. The steps on that ladder that used to be open and that people used to traverse very easily, with hard work for sure, but nothing standing in their way but the sweat off their brow. Those people now have no way to climb the ladder. The government, just like Obama wants, the government is making them dependent upon the government.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I think the Obama administration wants illegal immigration, not legal immigration, because with legal immigration, legal immigrants will be more difficult to control. Mrs. Pistachio is a perfect example. And now it's interesting that Dale tried to, I mean, it was obvious he was trying to bulldoze Doug into answering that question. Well, is this an anti-immigrant thing or an anti-Hispanic thing? And he said neither. Because Doug doesn't think that Dale was expecting Dale to reveal that Mrs. Pistachio is an immigrant from Mexico, or to focus on health concerns. In other words, he was not expecting an intelligent response. Doug wasn't conforming to the image and the template that Al Jazeera America was trying to force upon him. It's just remarkable to the degree to which the media tries to force conservatives into a template, and how frustrated they get, and how transparent their hostility gets when they don't, or when they're not able to do so. 1 minute. So on the other side of this break, we'll have the Constitution Quest question of the week, and a twofer as far as Constitution Quest is concerned, because we'll also have a brief discussion of nullification and the Electoral College, which was a commenter emailed to Doug following last week's edition of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. And then in the third segment, we will have, of course, a summary of the big stories of the week. We'll be right back after this break with Constitution Radio, with Douglas V. Gibbs. Jasmine is sitting in for Douglas V. Gibbs. We'll be right back.
KCAA.
What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com.
You're listening to the Douglas V. Gibbs Show on KCAA 1050 AM, your weekend dose of truth.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, The headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
KCAA and KCAA Internet Television, the station that leaves no listener and no viewer behind.
And we're back. Constitution Radio. Jasmine is sitting in for Douglas V. Gibbs on this first edition of the new year, 2015. Hope you all had a very happy new year. And by the way, for those NFL fans out there in our audience, at the latest report, the Carolina Panthers were up 10-0 on the Arizona Cardinals mid-second quarter, so they're approaching halftime as we speak. And by the way, I picked Carolina to win, so I'm not unhappy about that. Now we turn to the Constitution Quest question of the week, taken from a piece from the Game, available at many retail outlets, including ConstitutionQuest.com, where if you put the discount code DOUG, D-O-U-G, in the discount field, you get 10% off your purchase. And I really hope that as many people as possible took advantage of the 20% discount that was in place going clear back to October. That was a fantastic offer. Now we're going back to the standard 10% discount. Here is the question, the Constitution Quest question of the week. Is everybody ready?
Estamos listo.
Sí, señor.
Sí. Da. The Seventh Amendment provides a trial by jury, A, in civil cases, B, in federal cases, or C, both A and B.
I'll go with federal.
So Joe goes with B, and Alex?
Oh, sure, why not?
B?
Sure.
The answer is A, in civil cases. The Seventh Amendment states, in suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Basically, what it says is that even smaller civil cases, or in smaller civil cases, a trial by jury may be preserved, but at the state level, you have the right to waive that right. Amendment 7 also establishes that facts cannot be re-examined in any court. This is not double jeopardy. That's in Amendment 5. Though one could say this is related, but instead of applying to the person in this case, it applies to facts already examined in the case. The answer was A, in civil cases, interestingly enough. Now, and by the way, you don't get noogies for not getting the answer right. In fact, if I hadn't been on the asking end of the question, I would have had to have. Well, I would have had to do what I pretty much do every Saturday: have my copy of the Constitution out of camera range and cheat. But at any rate, now about that twofer, the Constitution Quest twofer, we had both the Constitution Quest question of the week and a little discussion that I wanted to throw in here because it came from a listener to last week's award-winning, power-packed, thrill-filled edition of Constitution Radio, Douglas V. Gibbs, who responded to a comment that Doug made last Saturday when, while explaining nullification's constitutionality, he made a comparison to the Trinity in the Bible, saying that like the word Trinity is not in the Holy Bible, the word nullification is not in the Constitution. But through Article 6, the 10th Amendment, and basic principles of state sovereignty constitutionally exists. Here's what the listener wrote. Doug, you said the word nullification is not in the Constitution, but it is there. I agree. The principle is implied, but you have often said that about the Electoral College, too. I need to remind you so that when you state that on the Electoral College that will not be true, not even with imagination can you read it into the document. Doug responded thusly, nullification is not implied. It is there specifically in description, and authority is provided by the 10th Amendment. It's not simply there by the name nullification. To use the word implied is to allude to implied powers, which are unconstitutional and are used to circumvent the United States Constitution through interpretation of the Constitution by the whims of politicians and judges. The Electoral College is the same, or works the same way, described specifically through the electors belonging to the states in Article 2, Section 1, and refined by the 12th Amendment. But the name Electoral College was not used until the 1800s. The Electoral College is a very important tool that protects us from the excesses of democracy. Basically, it gives the states a voice. It keeps the little states, the low population states, from being just totally ignored by the high population states. I mean, we got enough of that as it is with all the campaigning during presidential campaigns coming in like a dozen or even fewer swing states, Ohio, Wisconsin, Florida, Virginia, et cetera, et cetera. And Ohio, did I mention Ohio? Yeah, I did mention Ohio. This would even make it worse. So that's why we have the Electoral College, and not surprisingly, the left is trying to undermine and get rid of it. I think they call it the Electoral College Compact or something like that, where states that sign on to this, and so far only blue states have done it, but states that sign on to it would give their electoral votes to whoever won the popular vote, regardless of how the people in their state voted. So that's not real surprising that the left wouldn't be fans of the Electoral College, or at least they won't be until such time as the Electoral College would have elected a Democrat and didn't under this compact arrangement, in which case all of a sudden they'll become once again huge fans of the Electoral College. Now, without the Electoral College, our slide into tyranny would be much worse. The Electoral College protects the minority states, as I mentioned earlier. If the election was by pure democratic process and decided by the popular vote, the winner would be decided by the 7 largest metropolitan areas, and any voice of rural America would be ignored and have no power in the process. So that just kind of clarifies sometimes what might be seen as a conflation of implied powers with actual powers that are just not in the Constitution under a particular name. So that kind of clears that up. In fact, a commenter to this post at politicalpistachio.com. I don't know if it's the same person that the same listener that contacted him after last Saturday's show, but it looks like he was. I won't mention his name because I don't know if I have permission to do so. But ladies and gentlemen, and the Electoral College, concepts that are in the Constitution, maybe not by that name, but they are in the Constitution. Now we got to get a name for this. Poetry Corner or Conservative Poetry Corner is sponsored by conservativecannonade.com. How does that work?
That
Alex?
sounds good to me. I would like to say, however, that the hypocrisy of the left is such that they chant power to the people while they take the power away from the people. This is one example. And they've got a peace and freedom party. When the pacifists have their way, we end up with a war, and they spend all their time making the government bigger and more powerful to take away our freedom. It's just nuts.
Well, it's like I always come back to, it's right tribe, wrong tribe. You know, what we call hypocrisy, the left just calls, well, this is the way of things.
Now, I've come to the conclusion that these people live in such a bubble, in such a parallel reality, that when, for instance, Barack Obama says there's not a smidgen of corruption in the IRS, he actually believes it while he says it. He knew it was false when he came up with it, but at some point he's managed to make it true in his mind.
I think it's not just or even necessarily that he believes it. It's that he, A, wants it to be true, and B, wants and expects all of us to believe it. See, that's his totalitarian instinct, I think, that he's the master of all reality, and so reality must conform to whatever he says on any given day.
Well,
so,
my recently revised poem, now that you mentioned poetry, thank you, is called Jonathan Gruber and addresses some of this subject matter. Now, I have already read this on the air once, but when you're a poet, you find that some poems will jump out of your head fully formed, and you never touch them. And you find other poems, this one's short, just require tweaking and fixing and belaboring. So this is the updated and I believe correct version of my tribute to Jonathan Gruber. Oh, by the way, an acrostic poem contains a word or words that is or are accessed by reading the first letter of each line moving from top to bottom. So it says liars for hire across the top, and then it says liars for hire down the side.
Outstanding. Can't wait.
So here it is. Liars for hire infect the liberal movement. A desire to conspire removes any chance of improvement. Secrecy and stealth force citizens into slavery. Our power and wealth redistributed among the unsavory. How could these Leninist lice infest every part of our nation? Resist this tightening vice. Entreat God to grant our salvation.
Very nice.
It hangs together now. You know, I've been looking at it for a month or so, and I just knew there was something wrong with it, and I found the place, and of course my joy is not shared by the entire world, but who knows?
Well, it captures what I think more and more Americans, whether or not all of them are willing to admit it, are coming to realize, which is what Barack Obama has done, is doing to this country, has made great progress in doing to this country. And in turn, that's may well be what motivated and propelled the election results on November the 4th of last year.
Well, I've got another poem that I have not read on the air, and I need to warn the audience that this one doesn't pull any punches. It's pretty. If you're easily dismayed, you might want to turn the radio down. It's called Wicked, and there's a superscription that says, "If you're not frightened, you're not paying attention."
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think when Barack came by that human liberty is about to die? They raid our shops and tap our phones and pack our courts with their Marxist clones. They tell us lies and call us names while our Constitution goes up in flames. We cry and pray and organize, but nothing breaks through their wall of lies. We are racists and fascists and filthy swine, at least according to their party line. Check out the movies or TV stations. Ours is the worst of all possible nations. They teach it in high school and then in college. American greed is common knowledge. Whatever we have, we stole it somewhere. Our blood-stained souls are beyond repair. I got to get another, just a second.
I guess this is where Paul Harvey used to say, page 2. I'm not sure if that's what this is. This is live radio here on AM 1050 KCAA, FM 106.3, KCAAradio.com, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. Of course, Mr. Gibbs away today at an activism class. So I, Jasmius, am sitting in for Mr. Gibbs.
And I'm back.
And Alex is back.
Yeah, I managed to grab one of my one-sided copies. This is one of the nightmares you have in radio, and of course it comes to reality. The poem goes on. Barack Obama agrees completely. His Marxist views, once held so discreetly, inform all his actions from pen to phone as he creates legislation all on his own. He has spent all our money. We're drowning in debt. When you vote for a fascist, that's just what you get. He hates this whole country and all that is in it. If we must fight a new war, he won't let us win it. We have 2 more years to put up with this traitor. Every day that goes by, our danger grows greater. He won't want to leave when his term is expired, nor will the counterfeit czars he has hired. The last thing we want is to provide an excuse for Obama to engage in further abuse. Let him go quickly, this petulant child. We'll celebrate richly. Our joy will run wild.
And they said it couldn't happen here.
And
really,
go ahead.
And really, people, I think Americans today, and I would include myself among them, can't imagine what it would actually be like for something like that, for someone like that to take over here. And yet we have not only, not personally but the American people have elected and re-elected what amounts to a real-life, homegrown Manchurian candidate.
He's straight out of 1984, and I took a course in college about totalitarianism, and my professor, who was a brilliant man, he said that the only new political animal in the mix today is totalitarianism, because we now have the radio and the computer and the television and the airplanes. We've got the means to control the population totally and completely. And once America is under that kind of regime, then the whole world will be under that regime, and there will be no way out of it. They always say, well, look at Stalin. He didn't last. Stalin lasted as long as he was alive. No one challenged him. Totalitarianism works.
And especially when nobody realizes it's happening. After this break on Constitution Radio, we will have the big stories of the week. So stay tuned for that. Don't go anywhere. Constitution Radio, Jasmine is sitting in for Douglas V. Gibbs. We'll be right back.
KCAA.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Tired of the lies? Come here for the truth. Douglas V. Gibbs on KCAA 1050 AM.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, The headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
With more local radio every day, we're KCAA 1050 AM, Loma Linda.
We're back. Constitution Radio, Douglas with Douglas Jasmius in the center seat of the Starship Pistachio on this first episode of 2015, January 3rd, 2015. Glad to be with y'all in the Southern California Inland Empire area and listening all over the world at kcaaradio.com. And by the way, just as an update for all you NFL fans out there, it is now Carolina 10, Arizona 7 with about 5 minutes left to go in the first half. So I wanted to get that in there since there's sports programming on KCAA, so I wanted to make sure that was included. Now, I went let's just say that, I'll just admit it. I wanted to equal the record for a number of big stories. Because a few months back, Doug Gibbs, the host of this program, finally dropped all pretense of there being only 5 big stories of the week, because we're condemned to, as the old Chinese proverb holds, we're condemned to live in interesting times. So I got 15 stories this week. Now, not all of them are big stories, but a few of them kind of tickled my fancy, so I threw them in there anyway. So I will start at the bottom and work to the top, as we always do, kind of the opposite of the way David Letterman does his top 10 list. Start with story number 15. Did you know that Jeb Bush is the frontrunner for the 2016 Republican nomination?
Name recognition.
Exactly. Thank you, Alex. I mean, any poll taken 2 years before the next election cycle has even begun, it's all name recognition. The fact, I'll just leave it to you to decide whether there is any appetite anywhere in the GOP base, in the country at large, for a third Bush presidency. I mean, and historically speaking, now there have been I think 3, maybe 4 examples of 2 members of the same family being president: John Adams and John Quincy Adams, William Henry Harrison and Benjamin Harrison, and Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt, who were 5th cousins. And then, of course, Bush 41, Bush 43. There has never been an example of 3 members of the same family serving as president. I don't think that's going to change.
Well, what about this statement? I believe I remember it correctly. He says you got to lose the primary to win the general or something like that. I don't understand what he's talking about.
Well, how can you lose the primary, which is the means by which you get nominated, and then lose? I mean, if you lose the primary, you don't get to the general.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I heard that, and I'd have to source it. I apologize for that. But the fact of the matter is, he's not going to win any primary in the GOP.
No, the base won't accept him, and so he will. They will try to sell him as being conservative based on, he cut taxes in Florida. Well, never mind the fact that spending in Florida increased over 50% over the 8 years that he was governor of Florida. And, of course, his support for Common Core and for comprehensive immigration reform, which is why, there are some who thought that if Jeb Bush ran, Marco Rubio wouldn't. Well, now, even though Jeb Bush is making it pretty clear that he's going to run, Marco Rubio is still moving toward declaring his candidacy as well. And Jeb Bush is kind of a political mentor to Marco Rubio, the junior senator from Florida. So
they're both open border guys, aren't they?
Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
Well, that's unacceptable. Go ahead.
Marco Rubio was the face of comprehensive immigration reform in the last Congress. So, and that's not going to play with the base, period, no matter how they try to cover it up. So I don't think that's happening. Did you have anything else to say about that, Alex?
Well, I'm looking at John Kasich of Ohio. He seems like a solid guy. I think we've got some people in the dugout waiting to come up to bat that are pretty solid people, but we're as usual, we're talking about no-can runs.
Well, that's who the media want to impose on us. They always do this. Creatability meme about the rhino flavor of the month. I think it's going to be Scott Walker. Scott Walker, the thrice elected two-term governor of Wisconsin, the perfect combination, the fusion of establishment, credibility, executive experience, Tea Party policy accomplishment, and fighting the left head on. It's going to be Scott Walker, but they don't want us to know that yet. Story number 14, QE Infinity. I threw this in here just as kind of a reminder. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but there's a growing consensus that the Federal Reserve is never going to drop quantitative easing, the easy money, currency debasement. And it's not very difficult to understand why. As soon as they did, interest rates would explode, the deficit would explode. Any company in the private sector that's heavily leveraged would be wiped out. It would trigger the popping of all these bubbles that you hear about: real estate bubble, the stock market bubble, et cetera. So they're not going to drop quantitative easing. They couldn't. They would be committing economic and political suicide. Story number 13, ObamaCare fines. Did you notice that that Barack Obama did not issue an executive order deferring the individual mandate again like he did last year? November 4th might have had something to do with that. So expect on your tax returns for 2014, you will have to declare whether or not you had health insurance, and if you don't, you'll be paying a fine. Just kind of reminding everybody of that. Story number 12, Indonesian flight vanishes. This was the Air Asia Flight 8501, which disappeared. I think it was last Sunday, and then however, unlike Malaysian Flight 370, they discovered the remains of Air Asia Flight 8501. The common thread is that it took off from an Islamic country in Southeast Asia, from Indonesia, on a flight to Singapore. Not unlike Malaysian Flight 370 took off from Malaysia. It was supposed to go to Beijing, China, turned around and disappeared over the Indian Ocean. And the other common thread, both pilots were devout Muslims. So we'll never know what their motivations were, or whether they were accidents or deliberate. And whether Malaysian Flight 370 is somewhere in a hangar in Pakistan or something, we'll never know that for sure. But, there's more than a little circumstantial evidence of that.
One of the reasons I think that we'll never know for sure is that our government spends a lot of time trying to make sure that these things don't look like terrorism.
Exactly. Exactly.
Had that one pilot that crashed his plane deliberately, and he was yelling Allahu Akbar, and they said it was personal.
Story number 11, communist regimes tighten the communism triumphant. Two examples of this and how I think it pivots off of Barack Obama's weak foreign policy. The Chinese communists are cracking down ever more on pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. They're also really and openly cracking down on the Christian church in China. They're tearing cross, Christian symbols, crucifixes off of the front of Christian facilities. I didn't even know they. Well, actually, you can have a church in China if it's registered with the communist government, which ought to tell you all you need to know about whether that church preaches the gospel or not. And then there were 3 pro-democracy activists in Cuba who have openly been jailed because just for threatening to hold a pro-democracy demonstration in the main square in Havana, Cuba. And this, of course, right after Barack Obama opened U.S. relations with Cuba, recognized the Castro regime, and basically sold the Cuban people down the river.
The commie tyrants smell a weakling, and they're going full bore.
And they have no reason not to. I mean, we haven't even. Vladimir Putin isn't even in the stack this week, so I imagine he'll be in the stack again very quickly. Story number 10: snow in Southern California. Those are remarkable pictures that Doug posted at politicalpistachio.com. The one picture, I mean, at his house, you could still see the grass. But there are other places in or around Murrieta where you couldn't see the grass. There was probably 2, 3, maybe 4 inches of snow on the ground in Southern California.
It's global warming, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, isn't global warming wonderful?
I like it.
Yeah, the snow weighing down leaves on palm trees. You just can't get enough of that. So, and speaking of places that are, well, cold, although Mars is supposed to be cold. Story number 9. Did you see that the Islamic Authority in the United Arab Emirates has issued a fatwa outlawing colonization of Mars?
You got me with that one.
Yeah, apparently it's on the grounds that going to Mars, exploring Mars, would constitute suicide because of the dangers involved, and suicide is against Islam. So nobody can go to Mars, which I guess you know how the Barack Obama, the Obama administration has been talking up a manned flight to Mars. Now this is a reaction to that private group, Mars One, that's planning on colonizing Mars by 2025, but I wouldn't be surprised if Barack Obama withdrew whatever Mars exploration program that NASA might or might not have in the works. You can almost call it Mars attacks, or maybe jihadists attack Mars. Although the fact that Mars is the name of the Roman god of war would seem to make Mars the perfect home planet for Muslims or Islamic fundamentalists anyway, but
Are you saying that Obama might be of a mind to observe a fatwa?
Well, it's entirely possible. Story number 8, Sony release of the interview Underwhelms. It didn't make back the cost of the movie, which is $44 million. The ChiComms, the communist Chinese, might have been involved because the North Koreans don't do anything without Chinese permission. So that's something to keep in mind. Story number 7, because, boy, we're running out of time here. Story number 7, Steve Scalise, the House Majority Whip. No, it turns out he did not address a white supremacist convention in 2002. So, but that's just the opening salvo of the character assassination, the scandal monitoring that the media always releases, unleashes on Republicans whenever Republicans have more than a little bit of power. Story number 6, Barack Obama's imperial reign. Several stories here. He moved a wedding off a Hawaiian golf course because he wanted to play through the 1 in 5 women were on campus lie. He's refusing to remove that from the White House website. A number of other things. Let's see, story number 5, Mario Cuomo, the former governor of New York and the patriarch of the Cuomo political dynasty, passed away Thursday at the age of 82. So rest in peace, Governor Cuomo. Story number 4, a number of stories on the burgeoning race war that the left is trying to ignite, including the fact that New York protesters were carrying placards supplied by the New York Communist Party. Not surprising there either, is it? Story number 3, Barack Obama abandons Afghanistan, women and children hardest hit. All the women who have held office, public office in Afghanistan, or have even gone outside without a burqa over the last 12 years, what do you think is going to happen to them after we are fully out of Afghanistan? Story number 2, Gitmo Jailbreak. Barack Obama is essentially closing Guantanomo Bay prison without actually saying so. He promised he was going to do it in 2008. He wasn't able to keep his promise to do so by the end of his first year in office, so now he's doing it under the radar by just releasing jihadists willy-nilly right and left. The Bo Bergdahl for Taliban 5 trade was just the beginning, folks. And that includes a nuclear jihadist, Mohammed, what was his name again? That actually was a member of the Taliban intelligence directorate. And when he was captured, he was holding a note in Russian that indicated U-235 heavy water, basically. So here's a nuclear jihadist, and the Obama administration is releasing even him. And then finally, story number 1, how was your New Year? I hope everyone had a happy New Year. How was your New Year, Alex?
Oh, it was wonderful. I had my whole family there, and I got a great big, huge old bell. I bought at a yard sale, so I can make a terrific racket without getting busted.
Well, and Mrs. Hart-Starbett and I do what we always do. We slept through the whole thing. Time to plug yourself, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, my wife tried to sleep through it, but the bell woke her up. Go to conservativecannonade.org. It's a wonderful site.
I love that. And, of course, I'm Jasmius. I host the Hart-Starbett Radio Network at blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I write at politicalpistachio.com. And again, don't forget our YouTube channels, youtube.com/user/Hart-Starbett Radio, youtube.com/user/American Daily Review 2. Please subscribe, watch, and listen. Doug Gibbs will be back next week with the second edition of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs of 2015. We'll be back in 167 hours. See you then.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
This is your NBC Sports Radio update.
Wild Card Weekend. I'm Scott Seidenberg. The